strong words from the President on his remarks, particularly around semiconductors and building capacity with our
critical mineral. You see my smile.
Mineral. Can I just get your reaction to those words?
Well, listen, for me, you know, the team in Washington, when I always go there, is if the United States want to be resilient, Canada has to be part of the equation. And I think today is a big vote of confidence in that the strength of our relationship. You know, when you have the U.S. President who talks about critical minerals, when you talk about the corridor we have been talking about, semiconductor and Bromont, the fact that we want to create jobs on both sides of the border, and that our agenda, which is, you know, continental shoring, is really taking shape now. And it's not only what the President said during the speech at Parliament, but it's also in the discussion we had. There's really a sense of togetherness, understanding that both economies are complementary, that the best way to create jobs and good jobs on both sides is to work together. I mean, obviously, you'd be seeing my smile for him to talk about Bromont, something that we put on the table as to say, listen, it's good if IBM is increasing capacity on the U.S. side, but the largest manufacturing center for packaging and testing is in Canada. It's in both parties' best interest to increase production. So for me, the speech today is really about, it's rare that you have a moment like that, because when the President speaks, it gives the tone. So that gives us a lot of possibilities to go back now to businesses, to members of Congress, to cabinet secretaries, and build upon what the President has said today, because he set the tone. The tone is, let's work together, because when we work together, we do more. Let's build more together, let's innovate more together, and let's sell more together to the rest of the world. So very powerful message when you have the President say that very publicly, but also in our exchange when we had the bilateral meeting.
What is the government signaling by having the two Michaels here today?
Listen, this was probably the moment for me, you know, it brings a lot of emotion. I remember, I was Minister of Foreign Affairs at the time, and there's moments like that in life where I didn't know Michael Spavor, I know Michael Kovrig, but I would say now we're bound by something special. These are the prime example, as the President say, of resiliency, of belief, of strength. And for me to have the Canadian Parliament and the President of the United States and everyone who was there to applaud these two gentlemen who have suffered so much, given so much, but are here with us today. It's a great moment. To have the President talk about the Declaration Against Arbitrary Detention. You want to know when Canada can do big things? This is a Canadian initiative now that the President of the United States has been speaking and endorsing. I spoke also to Secretary Blinken. Obviously, I take a lot of, for me, when we did that at the time was to give a voice to those states which tried to suppress their voice. And I say together we'll give you a voice. And having the President mention that was a moment, and recognizing the two Michael, which are, these two individuals are showing the best of the best, and having them with us, was quite a moment for all of us.
How do you feel then about the allegations against a former caucus member of yours?
Listen, I'll leave that aside for today because I think today is a moment for Canada to celebrate, honestly, the togetherness with our U.S. friends. And like you said, we fought everyone so hard to bring both Michaels home. That's what I want to remember from that day for all of us as Canadians and Americans. You had Jake Sullivan in the room, you had Secretary Blinken, you had the President of the United States. That's kind of an acknowledgement of the work we did together to bring these two brave men here back home. And, I could never say enough good words to them because we shared moments that are between ourselves, but I would say brings me a lot of emotion every time I see them. And actually, those are the people I wanted to hug today, but I'll do that tonight.
Can I get you just back on semiconductors? You've announced today $250 million, which is actually $100 million in new money. Is this a down payment? Is this it?
Oh, there's more to come. But I can say everything all at once. You know me. So, but listen, this is when the President say we can do big things, the possibilities are there. Just think about that. The idea of the semiconductor came just a few months when we said with the CHIPS Act, how can Canada be part of the solution? What can we do to increase resilience? And really, it was a thought process where we say, well, we have a very strong and very positive corridor, which is in the auto sector between Windsor and Detroit. So really the thought was, I said, why don't we replicate that with respect to semiconductors? And to see that taking shape, to see now that not only we have signed an MOU with IBM so that we're going to increase capacity, but to have the President of the United States talking about Beaumont. Really in life you see a project, being worked out, and eventually here you are. I think for the whole ecosystem, because this is not just about the IBM thing we signed, but it's really about this corridor. And I think this is the type of things that I want to do, as I've been doing in bio manufacturing, now in semiconductor, in the auto sector, is inserting Canada in these very key supply chain. And to have the President of the United States talk about that Canada is going to be the place to package and test semiconductor, listen, the message is very clear to the world now. We're going to do that together. We're going to be more resilient. So this was quite a moment as well.
The CHIPS Act is $52.7 billion. Your investment is $150 million.
Well, let's call that a down payment for now, because as we increase resilience, we'll have to do more together. But just a recognition of the role of Canada for the supply chain of microchip and the resiliency that we need to have in North America, this is a huge step, because the message of the President is to the world that say, we're going to be doing that together, and it's going to happen in North America. And by the way, everyone, Canada is at the forefront when it comes to testing and packaging. And for folks who are watching us, packaging is not putting that in a box. Packaging is one of the most added value portion that you can do in semiconductor, because you need a lot of technology. Is how many semiconductor you can stack on a wafer. That's very technical for folks, but I can say this is not like your packaging at Amazon. This is really the very high-end value added you can do in semiconductor, and that's where Canada's positioning, in the words of the President. So I expect my phone to ring quite a bit these days now that people will have heard the President.
Both leaders today were talking about the need to protect democracy. Are you concerned that the foreign interference allegations might be a bit of a stain on this trip?
Well, I would say, I think the concern around foreign interference, by the way, it's not a Canadian issue. It's something that you've seen in Australia, that you've seen in other democracies of the world. The fact that the President talked about it today, it's probably like a call for action for all of us to be more vigilant, to be eyes wide open, and I would say to coordinate. And I would say make sure that we have all the tools as democracies to defend our values and our principle. That's what I hear, because when a president speaks, the message is to the world, and the issues around interference are not Canadian per se. We have seen that Chinese state and non-state actor trying to do that in Australia. We've seen that in other countries. So I think it's probably more of a call for the democracy of the world to work more together and improve the tools that we have. And that's why we've introduced new legislation, for example, on cybersecurity. We have introduced legislation, for example, in terms of having the Invest in Canada, having more tools. And all these things are going to be helpful in order to be ensuring that we protect our national security. And I think today there was something about, environment policy, economic policy, and security policy going hand in hand. And I think that is also a key message today. I think the world has changed significantly since we came in office. And environment, the economy, and security intersect much more. I mentioned that to some American colleagues as we were talking today, and I think they realize that. So a lot of work. And, you can never get enough attention from a U.S. president. And having him more than, 24 hours on Canadian soil, that's also a big message, because, like I said, you never spend enough time or too much time in Washington. But that is a great opener for us to go back in Washington and make sure that we translate his words into action. Just like IBM is a great example of vision, delivery, action, and what we're seeing today.
When you're saying they're calling you to action, do you think there's more action to be taken? Do you get the sense that your American counterparts are happy with the action you've already taken?
Well, I think it's more to all the democracies in the world. There's no uniqueness about that in Canada. We've seen that in other democracies around the world. What I was saying is that the call to action for me is vigilance, is eyes wide open, is making sure that we have here in Canada, but also with our allies. That's why you've seen, for example, in some piece of legislation, we want to be able to share more information when it comes to foreign investments so that we can better align ourselves with our Five Eyes allies. So for me, it's more a recognition that interference is something which is impacting a number of democracies around the world, and we need to work together on that.
What did you? Oh, I was just going to say. What did you make of it when Biden urged your colleagues to stand up when he was speaking about gender parity?
Well, I immediately stand up, so I don't know what the others did. But for me, this is a great moment, and thanks if colleagues saw that, because that was a moment also to celebrate. Listen, for me, I was on my feet instantly, so I didn't look what the others did. But it's a great moment to show to the president and to the world that we stand united on that. Merci tout le monde.
Oh, I was going to say, I saw you fist bumping with the trade minister and finance minister during the speech. I guess, can you give, what was your thinking behind that? What was going on in your head?
Well, listen, we are very close to each other, because a lot of what the president says for us brings a number of emotions, because we've been working very hard at some of these things. You talk about the Bromont facility, we talk about space. I'm going to be with Bill Nelson, the NASA administrator, on the 3rd of April to announce the Canadian astronaut who's going to go to the moon. There was issue around arbitrary detention. There was issue about the economy. So the Minister of Finance, the Minister of Defense, Minister Ang, we've worked on, and Minister Joly, those are all the files we've been working, all of us together. So there's moments like that where you say, not only it's good to do the work for Canadians, but when these words are reflected into, remarks by the President in the House of Commons, it's a moment that you say, I think it's a great recognition of the work we've been doing together. Merci tout le monde. Merci.